Good morning. I'm RJ Brim. I'm sitting here with independent candidate David Singletary. Thank you for having us again in your lovely home, sir.
It's always a pleasure, Miss Joyce.
Today I wanted to touch on our rural health care system. We have a lot of very impoverished towns, a lot of very small towns. How are you going to address rural health care and the quality of health care here in Mississippi, sir?
Well, the figure they are throwing around is 300,000 uninsured Mississippians across the state. And that does include a lot of your restaurant workers, Restaurant workers don't have health care for the most part, and so it will affect various segments of our society. And as far as the health care goes, health care has been a problem my whole life. Back when I was raised, the family took care of the family, did not rely so much on the government. Now, basically, the government has taken the place of the family, and you have what you call nuclear family, with the kids living all across the country and coming home on holidays to visit. And the government has interceded and took up that part that the family used to play in the American's life. And so with the advent of Bill Clinton being president, he appointed his wife Hillary to start looking into governmentalized health care for everyone. Now, I believe that we should, at the very most, provide a basic general minimum health care for Americans. Now, what I mean by that, normally most people go to the doctor 3 or 4 times a year, if that, and they get antibiotics and a shot, maybe some cough syrup, and they're good to go for another 3 or 4 months. And for a lot of people, that will work until your medical condition increases and your body starts degrading more and more as you get older. So rural health care is not only an issue in the past, it's an issue now, and it'll continue to be an issue in the future, I'm sure. There's no set prerequisite for it, because the cost of health insurance and the cost of medical is going to go up just normally through the conduct of business. I mean, inflation, employees want raises, all the medical equipment and technology goes up in price as our technology advances. So, and hospitals are in the business to make a profit. I mean, they're not a non-profit organization, so they want a little return on their money too. And as long as you got the profit incentive in there, then certain segments of the society are going to suffer and be left out and left to fall through the cracks. So I think a bare minimum generalized health care policy or coverage for every American, if you're going to do it. We used not to do it when I was growing up, but if you're going to do it, and you've got to cover everybody nowadays. And that's another thing with me. I'm not for giving a heart transplant to a 100-year-old person. Okay, my daddy 93. Both my grandmamas lived to 96. But there's a certain point there where you gotta turn it over to the Lord. I mean, and God wants you to have a certain quality of life while you're here. But at the same time, we don't much live over 100 years anymore. So stop the actuarial tables at age 100. That'll reduce your insurance costs, because right now they're projecting people to live over 100 years old, which just increases the cost of insuring the public there. So I'm not against addressing entitlements. I'm the only politician on the ballot that would even look at entitlements or raising the retirement age. Because when Social Security was created in the beginning, I believe Teddy Roosevelt was responsible for it. And people used not to live much more than 49 years old. Well, now, all of a sudden, women are at 86 and men are at 82 or something like that. So insurance costs increases exponentially with the increase in the elderly population here in America. So, with that being said,
Okay.
rural health care, I mean, some counties, Mississippi is a poverty-stricken state. There's one county in the state of Mississippi above the national average of the country, and that's Madison County. With that being said, the school district is the largest employer in some counties. So with that being said, you have to have a certain number of people in order to support a hospital. And with that being said, yes, there are going to be some rural hospitals closed. I know they're talking about it being a catastrophe across the state and about 31 hospitals being closed, but irregardless, you're not going to be able to save all the rural hospitals.
We had talked a little bit earlier about your idea of LPNs and RNs and empowering nurses to kind of...
Yeah, that's the next option I have, which no other candidate is mentioning. They don't have a plan. They don't know. All they want is $1 billion from the federal government right now, because that's going to be a big impact. But they don't know 3 or 4 years down the road that the state's going to have to assume those costs. Now, over in Louisiana, they say they got a $280 million savings from enacting the Compassionate Care Act. And they say it's costing them about $150 million extra to implement that. So that's a cost savings, or a penny saves, a penny earned. So that's about a cost savings of $150 million in Louisiana, our neighboring state, who has already enacted compassionate care. So yes, we should derive our wisdom and experience from things Louisiana does. But as you mentioned, my one caveat is expand the responsibilities of licensed nurse practitioners, LNPs. You can have a small little clinic set up. We got a couple of LNPs up in Florence, have an office downtown, and I've been to them several times. It's cheaper in most times. It's not as fast, but it's cheaper, and so give them more responsibilities. And also, with the advent of the computer, you can have a fiber optic network set up with a licensed physician on the other end at your nearest hospital, and the LPNPs can correspond with the doctor from the hospital also. So we would use the local rural county clinics to act as a triage unit, I think is what they call it back in the MASH story, and be right up there at the front lines, right up there at the poverty stricken, right up there at the not very populated areas of our county. And they would be the conduit between the patient and the hospital, to where they could stabilize the patient and have the means and facility to stabilize the patient until they can be transported to the nearest county hospital. So under my plan, at the very minimum, you would have one hospital for every 5 counties. You would have one hospital, and then the 4 surrounding counties would draw from that hospital or go to that hospital. And we would increase the responsibilities of the licensed nurse practitioners.
Back with Mr. Singletary, and we want to talk to you about tourism and our great state of Mississippi. You will be our chief executive officer. You will be in charge of everything, but part of that is letting people know the good Mississippi. So how are you going to handle that?
Well, my daddy likes a good fried oyster po' boy.
Don't we all?
And we're going to bring them all down to the coast to eat a good fried oyster po' boy too, if the red algae doesn't contaminate the oyster reefs and make the prices quadruple.
This is true.
But with that being said, what's Mississippi's slogan? We're the hospitality state.
Okay.
And one of the main reasons I'm getting involved in this governor's race is to give you a voice. Because you've been done a disservice by your representation of this state in our country we call the United States of America and around the world, We've got to get over this stigmatism that's been placed upon us, and that our political leaders perpetuate and continue to dominate the persona of the state. So with that being said, especially on the Gulf Coast. I mean, we're the, I'm not going to say, we're the Riviera of Mississippi. And we want everybody to come down here and enjoy themselves while they're here on the Gulf Coast. Of course, our biggest asset is the Gulf of Mexico and our white sandy beach, which the Harrison County Beach Department does an excellent job of keeping up, and commend them on that. Tourism, we need a new east-west thoroughfare down here on the coast, because we do get backed up with traffic when we got Black Spring break and cruising the coast coming down and scraping the coast, clogged up the highway pretty good. But tourism, Biloxi is our bread and butter. Gulf Coast, Gulfport, Ocean Springs, we're known for tourism, and people like our little hometown districts that we have in our downtown areas down here. So here in Mississippi, we got to remember that we're one of 50 states, and it takes me 7 hours to drive from Biloxi to South Haven. And on the way to South Haven, I take Highway 61 up through the Mississippi Delta. Yazoo City, Indianola, Cleveland, Clarksdale, Tunica. And then on my return trip home, I shoot over to Northeast Mississippi, to Corinth, Mississippi. And I go down through Boonville and Tupelo and West Point and Starkville. And yes, Starkville does need to get more involved because they have a college town there, Mississippi State University, and the millennials do need to be energized. So we got so many natural resources and assets here in Mississippi. Some would contend that we are our own worst enemy in the end, and that Mississippi shoots itself in the foot unnecessarily and cuts off its nose to spite its face, when we can compete with the best of the states in this country. We can utilize the Blues Trail. We can utilize the Singing River Basin. Do you realize the Singing River Basin is one of the only last undammed natural waterways in the country, if not the world? You can take it from Hattiesburg and come all the way down to Pascagoula. Or you can take the scenic Natchez Trace all the way from Natchez up through Tupelo, northeast Mississippi. I'm not opposed to bringing casinos to the Tom Bigby Waterway up around Aberdeen. I'd love for Lauderdale County to have casinos just to take all of Alabama's money. And we'll throw 3 little river boats up on the Pearl River in Jackson, Mississippi, and we'll offer trolley service from the downtown entertainment district, which will be located at the railroad station in downtown Jackson, and they'll be able to take trolleys to the little gambling boats on the Pearl River. And in the meantime, we're going to utilize the Coliseum State Fairgrounds in Jackson to its fullest ability. It will be occupied at least 80% of the time under Big Dave's watch on governor. You don't understand, I was born and raised in South Jackson. I know that city like the back of my hand. My family still lives up there. I'm the youngest of 5 kids. And 4 of my brothers and sisters live in Jackson along with my 93-year-old daddy. So, and we ran an appliance repair business up in Jackson. That's what my daddy did after World War II. And during that, we pulled service calls, picking up and delivering refrigerators and air conditioners every street, every house in that city. And then I moved down here to Biloxi in 1985, and I was in outside sales for Appliance Parts Company here in Gulfport. And my territory included from Pearlington to Pascagoula, up to Poplarville, across to Lucedale, the lower 6 coastal counties. So I know the Gulf Coast like the back of my hand. So there's not any areas in this state I haven't been to, not concerned about, and will not. You know, I will use my position as governor of this state, as ambassador of this state to the rest of the country and the world, to promote the natural beauty and all the resources of Mississippi that we have, and all of our heritage and history. But we're not going to let that slow us down as we move to the future. We're going to remember the past and put it in perspective.
Mr. Singletary, we're gonna kind of wrap it up here. But if you were to speak to your everyday Mississippian, guy that works from 9 to 5, got a mortgage, is worried about the federal government. What do you say to him?
I say to them, God has blessed me and God will bless you. I got involved with this campaign as a mission from God to help relieve pain and suffering in my lifetime. That not only includes my pain and suffering with my back fusing together and degenerating, but that includes your pain and suffering too. I had a cousin and a brother-in-law die of cancer. A mother died of Alzheimer's, and here I am, 62, suffering in chronic pain, and my government wants to throw me in jail for treating my pain with cannabis because I don't prefer to treat it with opioids and become addicted, and because them big needles with steroids in them have more side effects than the benefit you gain from them. You know, that's with my pain situation and my shots not working and the opiates bad, you know, that's just part of why I'm running. It coincides and goes back to the war on drugs. My pain doctor told me to get cannabis legal because she told me that she could not give me pain pills if I tested hot for pot. And I told her, I said, well, pot relieves my pain a lot better than these pain pills that constipate me and make me sweat. So right then I felt violated. I felt like my liberties had been taken away from me with not even my consent. This war on drugs has been going on over 100 years. And the government has been using the war on drugs excuse to take your liberties away from you. And when you get my age, over 60 years old, you don't want your liberties taken away by the government that you pay their salary. They're supposed to represent your interests. But they got it all twisted. They want to throw me in jail because they don't want the teenagers to smoke pot before a certain age. Well, pot's illegal. Teenagers can never smoke it. But they're still smoking it. It's still available. Your prohibition don't work. Your prohibition got my grandfather shot and killed back when he was a ATF federal agent. 1931. My mama was 6 years old when her daddy was shot and killed because of prohibition. Now, zero tolerance isn't obtainable, and prohibition doesn't work, and I'm here to give you your liberties back that you don't even realize were stripped from you. When these regulatory agencies are created to run the country, and they take the place of your legislators that you elect to do a job. That's basically what it is. They dictate my morality, and I live in the land of the free. Now, where did my liberties go, land of the free? You sing it in your Star-Spangled Banner. Why don't you live up to it? So I'm running for governor to give you your liberties back. I'm running for governor to stop pain and prosecution and persecution of your fellow man. When leave them alone as long as they're working and paying taxes and not beating their kids and loving on their wife and praising God, leave them alone. Don't turn the taxpaying citizen into a criminal. And if you got criminals in jail, you need to teach them a trade so they can be an asset and benefit society when they get out. But I mean, I'm hard pressed with throwing anybody in jail that's working hard, paying their taxes, trying to live the American dream, and treating their fellow man like they want to be treated. You know, this war on drugs was enacted before I was ever born. I had no say-so about it. You know, it was pressed upon me and pushed upon me throughout my whole life by society. You know, that's part of the reason you got legislators that are making unreasonable laws that law enforcement can't enforce. They don't have the resources. And we're $23 trillion in debt. You ain't gonna ever afford the resources. So it's time to put some rationale and some reason and some compassion back into the formula and get away from these laws that don't work, that have been implemented for 100 years. They say, well, Afghanistan's the longest serving war in the country's history at 19 years. Well, you don't even count the war on drugs that you threw upon your public within your borders
for over 100 years trying to dictate morality and telling people how to live. I think they're doing good if they got a job paying taxes and insurance and not beating their kids and loving their wife and praising God. Let's bring some rationale and reason back to the insanity. Let's stop putting the same ingredients into the recipe and expecting a different outcome. That's Albert Einstein's saying. The definition of insanity is to put the same ingredients in the same recipe and expect a different outcome. Therein is where we're at now. They call me crazy, but in my mind, I'm normal because I know what's going to happen. We done been through this fight back in alcohol. We should have learned back then that prohibition doesn't work. We need to adopt a policy of moderation and toleration within our society that covers the realms and the boundaries of our population. We are a mixed, diverse country, blessed by God, our Creator. And in God we trust. And we have one sovereign Lord over all, and He loves us all the same. And we should love each other the same and respect our fellow man.